Thank you, everyone. And we have here with us our keynote speaker. So we will proceed to the next part because, PJ, I know you are excited as I am to listen to our keynote speaker for today.
Yes, and with our theme for this conference, which is Crossroads of Information, Human Rights, Social Justice, and Equality, there is no better person to deliver the keynote for our conference. He is the chair of the Free Legal Assistance Group, or FLAG, which is a group of lawyers from all over the Philippines whose advocacy includes countering varied abuses of human rights and civil liberties.
He's also the founding dean. I was about to say founding father. He's the founding dean of the De La Salle College of Law, and they take pride in the fact that they are the first law school in the Philippines to highlight human rights and legal aid as part of their educational program.
He has a wide presence. I'm also a follower using Facebook, Twitter, and even TikTok as venue to explain legal concepts to the masses such as privacy, labor issues, human rights, and many more. He also uses these to answer law-related questions and, more importantly, as a venue to address pressing concerns in the country such as the anti-terror law and human rights violations during the quarantine, among others.
He was dubbed as woke Lolo because of his progressive views. But some would also say cool Lolo because of how he has reacted to his critics. Very cool. For example, someone criticized him because of his big teeth, but he used this as his tagline for his campaign, May ngipin ang batas, or as you would have guessed, the law has teeth.
Everyone, may I present to you our keynote speaker for the 10th Asia Pacific Library and Information Education and Practice Conference, Attorney Jose Manuel Chel Diokno.
Hello and good morning to all LIS educators, practitioners, and students all over Asia and the Pacific. Thank you to your steering committee, to Chair Kathleen Lourdes Obile, and to all the current and former members of the steering committee of the Asia Pacific Library and Information Education and Practice. I am very happy to be with you this morning, and I really like the topic that you have asked me to discuss. When it comes to the crossroads of information, human rights, social justice, and equality, I believe that we have to understand the context of these different concepts for us to see where we are and why we call it a crossroads. I believe as a human rights defender, I can say that human rights has been under attack in the last few years like no other part of our time in our recent history. The current experience that we have in the Philippines, I believe, reflects what is happening in other parts of the world as well, where we are experiencing not only gross violations of human rights, often pretty much on a daily basis, but we are also witnessing an assault on the very concept of human rights, where there are quarters who are questioning the value, the meaning of human rights, and saying that it is no longer a relevant concept in today's world. One of the major weapons that is being used to attack human rights, meaning the concept of human rights and its value in today's world, is the use, or rather misuse, of information technology to spread fake news and to promote historical revisionism. In other words, I believe today the struggle for the hearts and minds has gone online, and the pandemic has exacerbated that situation because we do so much of our lives today online. We learn online, we teach online, we shop online, we socialize online. And that really makes it the battleground for truth in our world today. When it comes to human rights, when it comes to social justice, truth is really such a big issue. And for those who are not in favor of human rights and those who do not want to touch the status quo at all, they would rather we don't promote the truth about human rights and the truth about social justice, especially online. They have used our social media platforms to do the opposite and really to spread fake news and to spread um, basically lies and deception about these concepts of human rights and social justice. And the Philippines has been at the center of this struggle for the last, at least the last 6 years, probably because we are number one in the world in terms of social media usage. Out of a population of roughly 110 million, we have 73.91 million internet users in the country as of January 2021. That number increased by more than 4 million from 2020. And we can see that on an annual basis, more and more Filipinos are really going online. In fact, I would like to quote, this is from a Rappler article, Filipinos spend an average of 4 hours and 15 minutes every day on social media. We have topped the global usage rankings for the 6th straight year. But the fact that we go online so often is it also means that we are susceptible to getting fake news, to sharing fake news, and also to the temptation of historical revisionism. And that is why I have said that the internet is now the battleground for truth versus lies and deception. And that is where I see the crossroads between what you do as LIS educators, practitioners, and students, and what we do as human rights defenders and promoters of social justice. Because it is only if we can work hand in hand, pushing for the truth and combating historical revisionism and fake news, that we can really make our world a better place to live in. For us to really understand what is happening, we need to understand what is happening online. And it's really been a struggle for the hearts and minds of everyone who participates in online conversations. When it comes to human rights, I would like to just say that sometimes it is hard for us to grasp the meaning and value of human rights. And I'd like to share something with you that I learned from my father, who also happens to be acknowledged as the father of human rights in the Philippines. He said that sometimes because there are so many rights, we have the right to life, the right to travel, the right to education, the right to liberty, and so many other rights. Sometimes it's hard to grasp the essence of human rights. And he shared with us a formula that I'd like to share with you. He said, basically, we have all 3 individual rights. That is the right to life, the right to dignity, and the right to develop to our full potential. From these basic individual rights come all our other rights. For example, from the right to life comes our right to health, among other rights. From our right to dignity comes our right to freedom of expression, our right against torture, and so forth. And from our right to develop comes our right to education, among so many other rights as well. And once we acknowledge and realize that all our rights can be subsumed under these 3 basic or fundamental rights, then it becomes easier to grasp what they are. And just as we have individual rights, since we all belong to collective societies, we also have collective rights that mirror our individual rights. So individually, I have a right to life. Collectively, as a people, we have a right to survive. That's why in the Philippines, in our constitution, we prohibit the presence of nuclear weapons in our territory because it will threaten our collective right to survive. Just as we have individually a right to dignity, collectively, we have a right to self-determination, which is really what corresponds to individual dignity. That no other people or no other government can dictate what we will do and how we will develop our nation. Only we can. And third, just as we individually have a right to develop, collectively as well as a people, we have a right to develop to our full potential. Now, why are rights so important, and what is the what really do we mean when we say we should protect and promote human rights? Well, first, I would ask you to imagine a world without human rights. Without human rights, pretty much everyone is fair game for anything. Killing, extrajudicial killing could happen without accountability and or punishment, torture, and so many other forms of gross violations of our dignity could happen, and we would have no recourse, no remedy. And that is the basic reason why human rights are so important for the world. But if you go deeper into it, I think you will realize that human rights is really all about accountability. Because when we speak, for example, of international human rights obligations of states, they require the Universal Declaration, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and so forth. They require that every victim of human rights violations should have a legal recourse or a legal remedy. And therefore, when we speak of human rights, we are really speaking about holding abusers and violators accountable. The second aspect of human rights, I think if we look at it on a deeper level, is really about empowerment. Because when a state recognizes the rights of a fisher folk, the rights of an indigenous person, the rights of a person with disabilities or other vulnerable sectors, we are actually empowering them. And that is why human rights are so important, because of the concepts of accountability and empowerment. And that's why I welcome your invitation to talk about the crossroads of information, human rights, social justice, and equality, because for me, we need to work hand in hand. LIS educators, practitioners, students, human rights defenders, lawyers, law students, and everyone else who is concerned about life and dignity. We need to all work together in order to promote what human rights really means so that we can attain social justice and equality. Thank you once again to the steering committee and to all the program committee members from all across the Asia and Pacific, as well as the panelists who are participating in this conference. Have a pleasant day.
Thank you, Din Chel. And now we have some questions for you. This is coming from Jelena Haynes. Would you like to read it, PJ?
Yeah, sure. Dr. Haynes' question is: as my doctorate focuses on indigenous knowledge preservation of cultural stories and practices, I am curious what policies, equal rights, and involvement in decision making for indigenous people in the Philippines to maintain their knowledge. Attorney Chel, would you know any policies that can help us preserve and even promote the knowledge of our indigenous people?
Yes, thank you for that question. There is actually a legal framework for the protection and preservation of our indigenous people's rights and culture. We have, for example, the IPRA law, among others, that requires that before any development projects or any intrusions into their ancestral domains is done by corporations or by government, there must be what is called free and informed prior consent. Although that is in the law, and although that is a very strong legal protection given to our indigenous brothers and sisters, in practice, we have found that this is the most violated of the requirements of the IPRA law. And that is why those of us who are really concerned about the rights and the culture and preservation of the culture of the indigenous peoples are pushing for the strengthening of that provision. We have found that it is often the subject of abuse when there's a mining or other kinds of projects on ancestral domains of indigenous peoples. They make it appear that consent was obtained when actually, when we dig deeper, we find that it's really a sham and that there was no genuine consultations done with the real people, the indigenous groups concerned and affected by the project. So these are some of the challenges that we face in terms of protecting indigenous people's rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Chel. Yeah, I remember there was a huge issue about Wang Od and Nas Daily that really went viral over Facebook. For our attendees, we're very fortunate to have Attorney Chel with us. So if you have a few more questions, Attorney Chel can entertain those questions. And while we're waiting for those, I'm just really curious, Attorney Chel. We know that you are receiving a lot of um, you talked about misinformation and fake news, and as a social media, in a way, you're also have these social media platforms. How do you deal with the negative flack that you're getting from Facebook, like the ngipin issue and all the other fake news? How do you deal with those personally?
I have a personal philosophy where I really deliberately do not engage. Uh, if they want to get involved in that sort of thing, that's up to them, but I'm not going to be ensnared into their trap. I'd rather concentrate on promoting the issues that I believe in and pushing the truth, online. That to me is the best way to counter those types of trolls and bashers. Yes, do not feed the trolls. Thank you.
Yes, do not feed the trolls. There's another question here, Attorney Chel. This is from one of the panelists, Andrew. Many of us outside the Philippines have been concerned by the extrajudicial killings, media suppression, and other human rights abuses. What types of protests do you think international people can do that would be helpful?
All forms of expression and all kind of pressure that you could exert on our government and to let our people know as well that you are concerned about the situation here will be so helpful. So it's really up to you in terms of how creative you can be and how much you can push the envelope. But we would really appreciate um, attention being brought internationally on what's happening in the country, especially the extrajudicial killings, because it's very clear to us that government has no interest in investigating these genuinely. They have no interest in holding the perpetrators accountable. And that's so sad because there have been thousands upon thousands of people killed extrajudicially over the last 5.5 years.
Yes, what's baffling me is that even if it's the information is all out there, um, some people still choose to look the other way.
Yes, well, I from I understand in terms of intellectually where they may be coming from, because for some of us, it's they see the problem and they want an immediate solution. For example, you talk about the issue of drugs and the war on drugs. There is a significant segment of our population who are so disgusted with the justice system that they would prefer to have a solution, even if it may involve extrajudicial killing. But what they don't realize is that if the government is truly sincere and truly serious in addressing the problem, then government must know that the only real lasting solution to fighting organized crime must involve the justice system. You cannot cut them out of the picture and just kill, because that's not going to solve the problem, as we have seen.
Yes, definitely. And it's against so many principles.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Attorney,
PJ.
yes, Attorney Chel, we have another question here from Felix Bolocon. He asks, is the press freedom in the Philippines lost as allegedly claimed by Maria Ressa?
Well, definitely it's under heavy assault, but there are people who are pushing back. So there is an ongoing struggle for democratic space in the country, especially online. There was a time when I felt that the forces arrayed against those who value freedom of speech were so strong that they had drowned us out online. But I'm now seeing that has not really happened. I mean, more and more people are pushing back. More and more people are determined to continue speaking truth to power. However, it is very clear that the attacks are deliberate and they are designed to chill speech online. For example, I personally am aware of two cases where which we were involved in as the Free Legal Assistance Group. We defended, one of them is the case of a writer from a province in the Visayas who simply posted something on Facebook expressing her dismay at how the pandemic was being managed. It was actually just a very sarcastic line about how Cebu is the epicenter of the coronavirus in the Visayas. And next thing you know, she was visited by police officers in her home, taken out of her home without a warrant of arrest and charged with inciting to sedition. We have another case of a teacher here in northern Luzon who tweeted something about the president. Again, he was visited this time by agents of the National Bureau of Investigation, taken out without a warrant and charged with inciting to sedition. Fortunately for both of them, when the cases reached the courts, the judges immediately threw out the charges because they definitely had no basis at all. But that did not replace the trauma of being arrested, taken away from your home, and it did not also erase the chilling effect it had on other netizens who heard about what happened. So it's not just the attacks on Rappler, on Maria Ressa, but even attacks on ordinary netizens simply expressing themselves. That has really resulted in a struggle for freedom of speech online.
It really gave the chilling effect, attorney, no? And it's been, and I think we've seen those stories here and abroad, and makes us think about what, who are they to do that?
Well, that's the dark side
We
of
all,
the internet.
yes, and we also experienced censorship and book banning from libraries just recently, where they removed certain publications from the library. And I was surprised that this is with the blessing of the HEI head. And it's
Yes,
just unfortunate.
it's very sad and very concerning that that is happening. It's good you pointed that out. It's part of the, I don't know, what we call an ongoing witch hunt that's being done by
Yes.
forces in or part of the government. Yeah.
And we had to come up with a statement for us from the UP School of Library and Information Studies to remind members of the LIS community to go back to our values as information professionals, the value of intellectual freedom, us supporting democracy, and, you know, critical thinking, among others, because removing these books just shortens the horizon, you know, for us.
Yes. And not to mention, of course, academic freedom as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I think we no longer have questions unless we have any more questions from the panel. With that,
While we're waiting for a question, maybe we can just ask one more because we know that next year is going to be the Philippine election. So, Attorney Chel, what would be some things that we should watch out for that that you may foresee is going to happen in the online environment for next year? What are the things that we should watch out for in order to protect human rights, social justice, and equality?
Well, it's going to be very toxic, I think, the coming months online, because you have this election is a presidential election. Everything is at stake in these coming elections, and I think that will result in a no holds barred type of campaigns from different quarters. And we have to brace ourselves, because there's going to be so much fake news. There's going to be so much historical revisionism, so much mudslinging that's going to happen in the months to come. I think your help in terms of helping the public discern what's true and what's not will be very crucial in May. Thank you.
Yes, Attorney Chel. And with that, we thank you for gracing our opening program as our keynote speaker. We will send to you our token and certificate of appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's just different now.
Best wishes and good luck, Attorney Chel, to your campaign.
Thank you. Maraming salamat. Please take care, everyone.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
you do take care. Thank you.